All right, well, thanks for joining us today, everyone. I want to welcome you to the UBC Learning Circle. The UBC Learning Circle is based out of the Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health, and we are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. UBCLC is also generously funded by the First Nations Health Authority. And to tell you a little more about us, we're a program that feature workshops on First Nations physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health and wellness. We prioritize First Nations knowledge sharing among health professionals, community members, elders, students, and youth. My name is Aurelia Kinslow. I'm the facilitator and education coordinator for the UBC Learning Circle, and I'm also a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Education, focusing on Indigenous education and curriculum studies. I am Cherokee, Choctaw, African American, Scandinavian, and I also have a background in dance, Polynesian dance to be specific, so I'm really excited about this session today, which is going to be on Dance for Wellness. Joining us today, our guest, Willow Thickson, is an Anishinaabe Cree Métis, and she's a second-year medical student currently studying at the University of British Columbia. She is on the Medical Undergraduate Student Council as the Indigenous Health Representative. She sits on the board of CAPE, which is the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, and she is the National Officer of Indigenous Health for the CFMS, which is the Canadian Federation of Medical Students. Really excited to have you here today, Willow. Thank you so much. She is also a jingle dancer and has been dancing various styles since a very young age. She's trained with the Alberta Ballet, wow, performed at opening ceremonies, in music videos, and as a backup dancer at concerts. Really impressive. At age 12, she got apprehended by Child and Family Services to be placed in group home and foster home, and believes that hip-hop, breakdance, and traditional culture saved her life. We're so honored to have you here today, Willow. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the other side of the screen for one of these learning circles because I've watched them and I've participated, and now I'm presenting. So yes. It's come full circle.
Full circle.
Mind the pun. So.
Nice. So I'll get the
presentation up.
Yeah.
All right, so did I press this one as well?
Sure.
Okay, so just a little bit more about who I am. So I grew up in Alberta, primarily. My mom's from Manitoba, she's Anishinaabe and Métis, and my dad is Cree and Métis, and I come from a long line of Indigenous people from the prairies. I like to say I'm a prairie mutt, but you know, that's because there's a lot of us. And I kind of was born in Edmonton in my mom's third year of university, not to give like a whole autobiography, and then we moved to the res, so I grew up going to powwows and being involved in my culture and kind of got separated along the way. So I grew up in a small town, like a little reserve. My mom wanted to move us away from that reserve, so we went to Fort McMurray. Then we went back to Edmonton, and somewhere along there I found my place in dance because we were raised always on the land, always physically moving, always, you know, we were skating, we were chopping wood, we were out on the land. And I believe physicality is as much of dance and as much of culture that it ties us together. And so they say our first drum beat is our mother's heartbeat, and then we continuously hear the drum for the rest of our lives. So it's literally in our blood.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. So from those first moments, you know, you go mother's womb, you're kind of dancing. My mom said I was a kicker. She thought I was a boy, but I was not. Just a girl. Yep. And then, so I guess I grew up dancing. And my mom said she brought me to a powwow, and she's like, "Oh, I lost you. I didn't know where you were." And there I was, like 3 or 4 years old, or I don't even know how old I was, dancing. And I was copying the steps, and I remember it exactly. I was just like, didn't know really what I was doing, but my body did. She was like, "I don't know what to do now. Now you know all the steps." And she comes from a place of residential school in 60 Scoop, so she wasn't necessarily as like knowledgeable about the culture in that regard. And so I was kind of culturally trained when I was young, and at some point, like I grew up physically active, like I said before, and I grew up as a competitive swimmer because my mom dropped both of us off at swimming. She was like, "You guys are going to be active and get out of my hair," kind of thing. But at some point, I just like I would get these awards called bottom dweller awards because I didn't really like swimming. I would just like float and pretend I was a mermaid on the bottom and see how long I could like mermaid around on the bottom while we were practicing. And which is, you know, endearing, but also not good for competitive swimming. So it's
your own thing.
Yeah, I was like, doing my own thing, right? I was not really into it. My sister was a national competitor. She like had a lot of friends that went to the Olympics. She was really, really good at what she did. And I begged my mom at some point. I was like, please, I just want to be a dance. Just want to be a dance. And so she eventually had the time. I don't know how she did it as a single mom. She's essentially a powerhouse. Had the time to take my sister to swimming and take me to dance. So then I started getting professionally trained, or classically trained as I would call it, in ballet and jazz and tap. And my mom said I could do everything. So I literally did ballet and jazz and tap and hip hop instead of, in Edmonton, there's a lot of either Russian dance or Irish dance, or Polynesian actually. So people take on a cultural dance, but I was starting to do like hip hop. Not hip hop now I know it, like breakdancing, like actual hip hop. I want to say actual in quotation marks, but like it was hip hop in a very choreographed fashion. Okay. You must remember, like, this is the 90s, right? So it was very salt and pepper-y kind of thing.
Great.
And that kind of, although that was like the very early stages of my dance career, I got a lot more training after that. And so I'll kind of take you on that journey and how that has consistently been incorporated through my life, through this presentation.
Wonderful.
And so, like I said, that's a picture of my niece. And because I don't have any pictures of me when I was super young, because our house burned down, and I don't even know if there are pictures of me at a powwow when I was young. But I believe dance is in our blood. And my niece, the little cutie in that picture that I'm dancing with, she is now obsessed with powwow dancing. She was 2.5 in that picture. And by the time I took her around the arbor the first time for grand entry, the second time I go to hold her hand to try and give her confidence, she pushes my hand away and she's like, I've got this. I've got this. And she doesn't even want it, and she's dancing. And so like later on in this powwow, we actually get her first jingle dress, and she wanted it to be purple like mine. Wow. And it's literally in our blood from birth, and it takes various forms. And this could be either coastal dance, this could be Polynesian dance, this could be our powwow dance, this could be, it takes so many forms. You're dancing when you're doing sun dance, like it's that consistent beating of the drum, and it always brings me back. And it doesn't matter if it's in a powwow setting, like in a very cultural ceremonial setting, or if I'm just dancing at the club. It always brings me back to a place where I'm starting to heal and be reminded of what my blood and ancestors are telling me. Right. I don't know if you had that same experience with Polynesian dance,
Definitely, yeah. I remember my first experience that really hit me was the first time I heard Polynesian drums, because Polynesian drums are usually an orchestra of many kinds of different drums, and there's hollowed out log type drums, there's bamboo slatted drums, there's little bongo looking ones, there's really tall giant ones that you have to play standing. But the first time I heard that ensemble, my mind just shut off, and I just went into some sort of trance and just felt like, wow, I feel like I'm home with this sound. And the dancers came on stage after, and when they came on stage, I was like, there's a way to interpret this and to be with this music and this feeling of like oneness. I want to do this. So that's how I got into Polynesian dance that way. But it's true, anytime I hear drums, it just has that same effect of like, yeah, the heartbeat and the pulse of life. Feeling that, it's incredible and healing, absolutely.
And it's grounding. It's like something about dance, and even from the very beginning, like when I was lost in the powwow, I just remember just wanting to move to the beat, and everything else that goes on in your mind kind of just separates. It's like a meditation almost.
Exactly.
And I do dance jingle now, and I danced fancy when I was a teenager, which is the dance of the butterfly. But jingle is a very ceremonial dance for my people, and it's a healing dance. I was asked to dance. My mom asked me to dance for after the TRC for healing, and so I've danced jingle ever since. But it makes sense that it's a healing dance because it's a meditation, and it's a prayer dance. So people ask you to dance for them, dance for the sick, dance for people that are not able to dance, dance for the elders, dance for the children. You're kind of the medicine. And I'm not going to go on to the story of the jingle dance because that's a whole other ball of wax, but it starts very young. And I think babies are dancers from the womb. And it's cross-cultural. Like, it's not just, you know, this pan-indigenous powwow culture.
Right.
It's all indigenous cultures. You'd be hard-pressed to find an indigenous culture, I haven't anyways, that doesn't dance.
Right. And that doesn't have drums and that heartbeat incorporated in their music somehow, and that they're able to dance to and do ceremony to.
Exactly. Yeah. And dance is always healing. So for me, after this whole, you know, powwow zone, competitive swimming, and then I go and I start this classical training, and I was really struggling. So Edmonton is a very racist place to grow up, and I was struggling with my identity. All I wanted to do was dance, and because my family was like, I'm consistently surrounded by Indigenous people my entire life, but because of residential school and the effect of that on my family specifically, we weren't really deeply embedded in our culture. There wasn't a lot of language spoken. We weren't at as many powwows anymore because my mom was busy and raising 3 kids as a single parent. My sister was in swimming. I was in dance. So all I did was wanted to be a ballerina. And I remember I wrote an IB paper on Maria Tallchief and how she was my hero because she was essentially the first American prima ballerina, and she was Indigenous, and she was just phenomenally gifted as a dancer and like in her own athleticism. And so I was trying to find myself in these hyper-colonial spaces surrounded by tiny little white ballerinas. Like in Edmonton, there's Ukrainians and there's like a huge Eastern European population. So when you're going through those puberty years and those young years and you're comparing yourself to everybody and you're the only brown girl, that definitely, like, my body is not the same as a traditional, like, Eastern European girl's body. There's like these colonial European, Eurocentric standards of image, and when you're 12, 13 and you're just trying to fit in, seeing dancers like Maria Tallchief, who, although she was thin, she didn't have the same body as everybody else. She still had darker skin, she still had slanty eyes, and for
muscles.
She has muscles, yeah. And I always thought and was grateful that I even knew about her, because all the other prima ballerinas that you hear about were like Russian or Ukrainian, French, yeah. And so being able to see myself in somebody really helped me with my identity as I was struggling to find my place. And so even when things were still good at home, I was able to find places of power within dance that helped me. And I'm really grateful to have, she wasn't a role model directly because I didn't know her, but it was nice to be able to see yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and that alone for me was healing. Was like, okay, just because I'm different looking doesn't mean I can't do this. And it was really nice.
And she was one of very few, even in the 90s still, there were very, very few women of color who were, prima ballerinas or elite in the dance world for classical dance and whatnot. Now there are a couple more, women who are black or who are Native American. But it's still a struggle to find those people that you can, see yourself in. Right? Yeah.
But it's nicer now that there's maybe like a handful of people of color in dance. But for me, I was going through that like early childhood stage. This was right before I got taken away by social services, and I kind of like really just wanted to be white. Like I wanted to be white, and that's really a terrible thing for me to say now, because I don't know if like all Native girls go through that, if you're surrounded by white people, or like, I keep saying white, I'm sorry, surrounded by Caucasian people, but like, it's a struggle, and it's a place where if you don't feel like you belong somewhere, then you lose your sense of identity, and then you become insecure, and then it's like kind of a downward spiral into it. Like, I was pretty depressed trying to fit in. And so for me, Maria Tallchief and like consistently working on my ballet and working on my dance was like a place of power. And I always felt like, and this is gonna sound arrogant, but I'm going to say it anyways. I always found that Indigenous women and Indigenous people had an innate physicality and innate strength that I was not comparable to my Caucasian counterparts. So there'd be some times where this white girl who may have the figure and the look of a ballerina, but I was able to outperform her with less training
and strength.
Mm-hmm. And I found that across the board with a lot of my friends that were dancers or athletes, my sister that was a competitive swimmer, and I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know if that is necessarily because of the way we raise our children to be so free and active. Like most Indigenous parents just let their kids fall, They're not overprotective. They're like, oh, you're going to fall, whatever, you're going to eat the dirt, it's fine. You're going to be okay. And I think that gives us a leg up, right, in the physicality department. And I don't know if this was this was something that I was starting to realize in these middle years, seeing Maria Tallchief and being like, is it in our blood? Are we just stronger? And so there's this balance between understanding, okay, well, I'm not like them, but what are the strengths of not being like them? What do I don't fit in, but that doesn't mean I'm weak.
Yeah,
and that was
finding your own strength.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Well, this is a funny picture, but so I wanted to talk a little bit about places I found the light through dance, because it's really nice to have that experience, that upper middle class experience of being able to go to ballet, and that's not a lot. That's not a common story, really, in my family's circle. I don't know how my mom pulled it off, and it definitely is not a common Indigenous story that was oh, I had all these privileges, look at me, I got to go to ballet. And it sounds really lovely, and I was raised like a little rich kid, but then kind of my world comes crashing down when I'm about 12 years old. And me and my brother and my sister get apprehended by social services because the effects of residential school and trauma and things kind of all compounded in my mom's life. And so she ends up getting diagnosed later on with schizophrenia, but she was a little bit crazy. I don't want to say crazy because that sounds bad, because I love her a lot, but it all came crashing down. She was phenomenal to us, but we got removed, and all my world got shattered. I could no longer be Maria Tallchief because I was in social services and they don't pay for dance, kind of thing. All of a sudden I was living with an African family, and they took me to African dance classes, which was fine, but then I ran away. And so then I got put in a group home and a foster home. And I was really trying to not only was I going through that identity struggle, I was now going through the turmoil of, I think, what most or a lot of Indigenous kids are going through. That's foster home to group home to foster home to group home to, at one point I was even in youth detention, which is a step before youth jail. And I was really just trying to find peace in the chaos. And I've lost my connection to my culture, and I was just running around trying to find this space. And so I end up dancing a lot. I was going to, they had all ages dance parties in Edmonton, which was, I think, problematic for a lot of people, because it's not, you're in a big city. There was a lot of, I think, drugs and booze and things that were happening, but I literally went to dance. I had a coffee and would go and dance until 3 a.m. until I'm just dripping sweat. Taught myself how to break dance on the internet back when the internet was still dial-up. And so
that's great right there.
Yeah. And so I looked it up and was yeah, break dancing, this is gonna be sweet, I'm gonna teach myself. And so then I'm dancing at one of these all ages dance parties, and I'm trying to practice what's called a 6-step. It's one of the basic breakdancing steps, because all I wanted to do was dance and get it out. That was my fuel for all the chaos that was going on in my life. My sister being one place, my brother being another, then he was in jail, then my mom's over here, and I had no stability. The only stability I had was the fact that I could move at some point.
In your own body.
In my own body. And so I'm there on this all ages dance, trying to figure out how to do this step that I learned in 8-bit on the internet that was pixelated little dude trying to teach me. Yeah, and I'm just yeah. That's pretty ridiculous. And I'm trying to do this thing, this guy comes up to me and was what are you trying to do? And I was I think it's called the 6-step, and then I'm supposed to go into some turtle or something. And he was what are you trying to, what are you actually trying to do? I'm trying to learn how to break dance, okay? I figured that this is a place, I can no longer have the structured learning. I no longer have the culture because I'm removed from it, that I'm just trying to find something. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll meet you back here every week. And then he starts teaching me how to break dance.
Oh.
And then it just carries on. I just keep breakdancing, and then I start house dancing. Then all of a sudden, this whole new world of kind of like underground at that point, street dance, which is not underground because it's not the 80s. That's, I guess, when it was really underground. Mm-hmm. But this whole subculture of people that dance, that were never classically trained to dance, mm-hmm. that were never culturally even necessarily trained to dance, all came together and held me up. And they're like, hip hop is its own way of life. like mm-hmm. They like wax philosophical about this hip hop lifestyle and about the so there was all these, there's the, like, I guess the classical 4 elements of hip hop, right? MCing, turntablism, graffiti, and breakdancing. Mm-hmm. And I get roped into this world that I think it saved my life because it wasn't a life of crime, it wasn't a life of alcohol, it wasn't a life of drugs, it was a life of dance and mastering skills. And that was what it was about for me. Yeah. And it took me away from this place of darkness where I could have easily got sucked in to the, like, all the youth in care pretty much struggle with that same loss of culture, family identity, trying to find their way. Maybe they're in, like, I think in grade 9 I was in 6 different schools. How are you supposed to maintain at any level of stability? And so when I started dancing, when I started finding this light inside of myself, all of a sudden I get stronger. All of a sudden, okay, I'm going to take my little brother. I took him out of social services. I got a full-time job. I had to drop out of high school, which was sad, but I got a full-time job. Took my brother out of social services. We, like, me and my sister collectively ended up raising him at that point. Wow. And it was really nice because it gave me the strength and the stability to know that I could do something. Mm-hmm. And even if it was dance, like, not saying that dance is belittling, but, like, for me, it was a place of power and a centering. Sure. And I was like, this might not be the culture and this might not be the ballet that I wanted it to be, but it is a place where I'm able to connect with my inner self and gain that strength. Mm-hmm. And I think now when I reflect on it, it's actually like tapping into the strength of my ancestors in my blood through the dance. And it maybe takes the form of hip hop at that time, but
for every time there's going to be a different...
Yeah, and so, like, watching dance evolve throughout my life, and even when I was, like, making this presentation, I was like, wow, there's never really been a moment in my life where dance or physicality has steered me wrong.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And let's talk a little bit about how dance is holistic. Like, I'm sure other people have heard that term being used with dance, like, well, dance can involve your body, obviously, but also how it can be spiritual and how it can be healing also to your emotions and to all aspects of self. Like, how do you find that through that experience that this was a holistic way of just being grounded and healing and having strength through this ordeal that you went through?
I'm going to answer this through a sad, semi-tragic kind of funny story. So I'm at this, like, all ages dance party, right? And my mom was kind of in one of her peaks of schizophrenia, which, if you don't know a lot about schizophrenia, it's a really troubling illness because everything that they experience is super real, and they can hear things that they think are real that don't actually exist. And she told me that she was gonna die, essentially. And, like, very straight up, I just got back from the doctors, I'm gonna die. And so I'm in my teenage years being like, my mom's gonna die. Like, I'm trying to process this grieving, right? And the only way I knew how to process it was dance. The only way. And I went to the all ages dance party. It was like probably 8 p.m. and I danced until they shut down. I was crying, like, all of those emotions I was forcing out of my body, through my body, like, physically through my body, and I couldn't stop it. The only thing I was doing was drinking water because I was sweating so much and couldn't stop dancing and crying. And one of the people that, like, was working the door, he had seen me there every week and dance. He's like, what is going on with you today? Like, you are A, on fire on that dance floor, and B, and B, you are also, like, something is happening. And I'm like, I just don't know how to process these, like, all of these emotions. And so after, I ended up sleeping. By the time I got home, it was like 3 in the morning or something like that, and I was 15, or I think it was 14, 15 at that time. And I go home, and after just dancing all night, I mastered a step that I probably can't do now, but it looked really cool then.
What was it?
So I don't know if you know what a glide is.
I think so.
So it was kind of looked like the Melbourne Shuffle now, but it was like a gliding top rock step. It's actually more staccato. I don't know how to explain it. And so
Complicated and fancy.
Complicated and fancy, yeah. And so I get home and I sleep, and then I wake up, and in the morning it's like I was okay. I was okay if my mom passed away. I was okay if my mom didn't pass away. I was like, all of those emotions and that potential grief and that loss and that, those possibilities that my mom is telling the truth, that my mom is not telling the truth, that all of it was processed through the dance that night. And so I believe that dance is holistic in every emotion. I've danced through happy moments, I've danced through sad moments, and there's something beautiful about being able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Really good story. So hip-hop saved your life.
Hip-hop did save my life. Alright, and so after all this happened, I took my brother out of social services, and we're raising him, and I'm still dancing, and I'm not quite in school yet, because I knew I needed to go back to school to be the role model for my brother, but it was not financially feasible at that time, trying to raise him. But then he starts kind of like not going to school, because he's like, well, you didn't have to go to school, and I'm like, this is not okay. So I tried to go back to school, and in those like upgrading years, I was 17, 18, I also start getting jobs as a dancer. So like, oh, you have a very unique skill. I was like technically classically trained. I combined that with my house and hip hop and breakdancing. And so I got hired at 17 as a kokanee girl, and I danced at all sorts of bars, technically illegally, but if I went in there to dance and then came out after I danced, then it was okay. I did the number one Elvis impersonator. I was a backup dancer for him at Las Vegas showgirl styles. It had like big feathers, and it is what it is.
Fun.
It's super fun. It's like, the Roxettes where they're kicking and they're all in sync.
Yeah.
It was really fun, and it paid pretty well, and I traveled and I toured Alberta, and that was kind of that. I did a bunch of opening ceremony stuff for some track where I was a lead dancer training other dancers, and I did all sorts of car shows and hip hop shows and concerts. A lot of my friends that I danced with at that point, I met through Boyle Street Education Center, which is the second place that saved my life. And we all met there, and we're all hip-hop dancers, kind of break dancers, didn't know each other really at that point. Ended up in this inner city ghetto high school for, I don't want to say vagrants, but like kids who lost their way or were in jail or were like in and out of foster care, like my same story kind of thing. And then I meet there, and I meet my friend, who's still my friend to this day, and I'm wearing like this little Kangol hat and this armband, this sweaty armband, like, little puffy jacket. I'm looking what I think is like fresh at that time. And then I walk in, and I'm wearing a black Kangol hat. She's wearing a red Kangol hat. I'm wearing like a white wristband. She's wearing a black one. I'm like, who is this girl? She's Cree, I'm Cree. We just like, we just look at each other. I'm like, I don't know you. We all end up dancing together. Now there's still professional dancers dancing around for Tribe Called Red all over and doing their thing. And it was a really nice community where I got to make some money and got to still go to school. The support at Boyle Street was phenomenal. They like to say now, they're like, oh, now we have one of our graduates. I didn't actually graduate there, but like I'm one of our students that's now in medical school. That I always brag and tell the kids, because a lot of the kids, we came from a troubled place. Like in that school, there were 17-year-old moms with 2 kids. There were ex-pimps. There were ex-prostitutes. There was like, it was a rough school, but we all had hope that we could do something better. And for us, it was dancing at that time. So the school was doing something phenomenal where they catered to us. Like, we see you guys spend a lot of time dancing. So they talked to the school board. They did a bunch of work on their end. And then they made it so all the hours that we did dance, we'd get dance credits. So we got dance 10, or what's it called here? Dance, we have dance 10, 20, 30. Here you guys have dance 10, 11, 12, or whatever your credits are called. So we got credits for that.
Okay.
Which was amazing that the school tailored to us to try and help us graduate, to try and help us be better.
Right.
And it was just one of those things that we were passionate about. Now in that school they still have, you can learn turntables and turntablism and get credits for it through music. You can do Indigenous art. I don't know if they're still doing the dance, but for us then, that's what really like fueled our life. It was a lot of fun. The professional years were fun. before the second downfall, which is why Willow Street almost saved my life. But I know you were a professional dancer too.
Yeah, it was semi. Like I mostly did community dancing in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii at the time up until 2009, and I started Polynesian dance when I was about 15, and I was just learning for the first few years and performing in the community, and oftentimes dance groups there will just dance for community events like a baby shower, so like a child will be born or a child will turn 1 and we'll have a big party and feast and dance, or someone's engagement party or someone's just community celebrations. We'd show up for those, and we typically didn't get paid for that. They would just feed us, and we're perfectly happy, and we got to mingle with people. Once in a while we'd be hired by some club or something to do some 3-4 numbers performance or something like that. I told Willow a story earlier of how I injured my fin, was bleeding everywhere one time in one of these. That was one like that in a club. Yeah, so once in a while I would do some paid performances, but most of the time, because dance is so healing and holistic, and one way to describe it is like, some people enjoy going to church. Well, dance was my church. Like going every single Saturday and practicing for 3 hours straight until like all I want to do is sleep. That was my church. Yeah, that was really healing for me. I did this through high school and my undergraduate study, and then I eventually was doing a master's degree, and it was a very, very, very stressful time for me during my master's, and dancing throughout was healing. Like my stress of the week, I would come and dance it out and sweat it out for 3 hours. Not to mention also dancing in the evenings, like dance parties and things like that. I'd also be dancing salsa. Like I was also in like Latin dance and Brazilian dance, and I would just do that for hours and hours and hours. And absolutely is what kept me grounded. Is what kept me in one piece. So I wouldn't freak out and quit my master's program. I would stay in there because I could heal and get better from my stress. So absolutely, it just is huge. It's such an important part of my life still. Yeah.
All right, so this is kind of like the tragedy part too. So first tragedy was trying to find myself after getting apprehended by social services. The second tragedy is my stepdad killing himself. Was pretty tragic for me, and suicide is very rampant in our communities, and it affects everybody. So that was really hard for me to deal with because my mom was also not doing very well again at this point. My stepdad killed himself. My brother was starting to go down a darker path, and I was really lost again. Like, I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't have any family to talk to about grieving because of residential school, and it was like my mom, my sister, me, and my brother, until now. My later years I've connected with a lot more of my family, but back then it was just us, and my brother was down a dark path. My mom is not doing so well. My sister's doing her own thing, and my stepdad killing himself. I'm like, okay, so where do I have to go? Back to dance, clearly. But dance wasn't working, and I kind of started spiraling down a darker path. And I always just knew that even though I was spiraling down this darker path, I was like, I can always still dance. I can always still dance. And I would just try and escape this dark path and go and dance and escape and go and dance. And I knew that there was hope for me still. And so I kind of set out this dream and this goal that I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Vancouver. I'm going to go to Vancouver, because I knew it was between Vancouver and kind of Toronto is the Canadian dance scenes. And Vancouver had Harbour Dance, and Harbour Dance is kind of a one-of-a-kind thing that I hadn't seen. It's definitely not in Edmonton. It's not in Calgary. It's something that I guess Toronto kind of has something similar. But for me, it felt like Vancouver was drawing me, and I needed to go, and that's where I was going to study and practice and hopefully take this professional dance career to the next level. So I always had that in the back of my mind. I was grieving. I was no, I'm going to make it to Vancouver. And my mom started getting better, which was really good, really, really nice, because that had been many years of her not being on the right medications, and it was just there were highs and lows, and she started getting better, and I was like, Mom, I'm gonna go. She's like, how much money do you have? I was like, $600. And she's like, that's not enough money to make it to Vancouver. I was like, but I can buy a bus ticket, and I'll get there, and everything will be good after that. And she was like, yeah, I hate to break it to you, that's not going to cut it in Vancouver. So I ended up like moving to Lake Louise and doing this kind of 2-year stint where I'm a server at the Chateau, Lake Louise up there, fine dining server. And this is in my early 20s, and I just keep thinking and reminding myself, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a dancer, and this is going to be my life, and this is my power place. Because as long as I had that hope that I was like good at something, it was able to pull myself away from the grief and pull myself away from the sadness. And there was lots of things that happened that wasn't just my stepdad killing himself. It was like I lost probably 4 people in a year and a half. Through various ways, and I was really struggling with how do you change, your whole life shifts when you lose somebody that was so integral. Then you lose somebody else, and you're like, what is happening? My friends are dropping like flies. Yeah, and that's a very real thing that's happening all over, and it wasn't just me, it was a lot of people losing people. And I don't know if that was in my late teens, early 20s, and it destroyed my world. I didn't know who I was, I didn't know who my friends were, I didn't know how they were able to deal with it, and I didn't have any guidance. But in the back of my head, I always knew that I could be a dancer. So I just kept doing physical things, because even though I was out of a place of dance, I would go and they had like a workout room, and I just blast some music and just give her. That was all I could do. Yeah. And I started kind of running at that point and doing anything that was physical, because it felt like it gave me a similar rush. Like it was not the same as being connected to the drum, but if I was doing something physical, I felt like I was at least connected to myself.
There's also a rhythm in running that can sync you up that way too, I find. It's not as fun, but it's
not as fun, and it's not as creative. And that's why dance to me is like, it encompasses more than just the physicality of running or something, because all of your emotions, you can literally go like, oh, I'm feeling sad, like your body's like slumping, and like, you're feeling powerful and your chest is up and you're out here, and like it literally takes your emotions, and it's so expressive and so creative that you're able to do it. And I was doing some work with youth, and I was telling them, I was like, when you're just really angry, just like blast some angry music and just like shake your whole body. They looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, it's a way. It's a way to get those emotions out. Yeah. And you'll feel better. And they say like screaming therapy is a thing where you just go and scream, and I feel like it's a very similar thing. You have to get those emotions out, and that looks different for everybody, but I believe dance is one of the ways that we are more capable of dealing with those emotions. So here I am, Lake Louise, trying to save money, trying to get myself to Vancouver, because it was like, for me, it was like Mecca, like the motherland. Like somehow my whole life was gonna like sort itself out as soon as I got here, and I was able, somehow I was gonna just like, be a professional dancer, and like somebody somewhere was gonna see my talent or something. I don't really know what was going on in my head, but that was. You had to start there. Yeah, I had to start there because I had to get away from all the grief and all the loss and all the negative things that I experienced in Edmonton and back in Treaty 6, and like it just was no longer home, and it's taken me a very long time to be back home and be okay with it. So I'm en route here, and so here, this is me now, and it was kind of a long journey because I got here and I started at Harbour, and I was like, okay, dance is gonna be my thing, and I met a bunch of break dancers, and we had a breakdancing crew. We performed at a bunch of bars that are no longer what they were called then, so I'm old lady now. But we had like a little dance crew, and I was dancing at Harbour, and I had a wicked snowboarding accident where I actually tore my MCL and ACL, but not bad enough to need surgery. And so I was at physiotherapy, and they did the best that they could, but there's scar tissue. I can no longer do the center splits, and my left splits is like, I can't even really fully do them either. And I was just like, oh no. To be a professional dancer, you need to be able to do everything, and you need to be malleable to whatever you get picked to do. So I'm at Harbour, I'm training. Pam, one of the owners at Harbour, was like, you look like you're in pain when we're doing these stretches. I'm like, I actually am in a lot of pain. Like, I can't do this. And then she told me about some laser therapy to like laser the scar tissue away. That is very, very expensive and only offered to professional athletes. And because I was like not a professional dancer, but I was not a professional dancer, I was still getting paid. I was still getting gigs here in Vancouver doing like background dance work for videos. And just like, I was so sad when they told me that I couldn't really do that. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, I'm serving to fuel my dancing, and I serve this couple at this table, and they're like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a server, and I'm trying to dance and trying to, make my way, but I just love movement, and I love if I could study movement for the rest of my life, I would study movement. And they're like, did you know that there's this degree called kinesiology that is literally the study of movement? And it was like, my mind was blown. I thought, my life has changed forever. And I thought that, I could just work with dancers maybe for the rest of my life because I'm so connected to dancing. And so I kind of went down this path, and then I looked and I was like, wait, but I dropped out of high school. How do I do this now? I don't even have grade 10. So I just danced that out too. So I just kept dancing and trying to figure out this plan. And I ended up doing high school upgrading and dancing, and my dance slowly slows down as all of a sudden I'm like, okay, high school upgrading to Langara to UBC. Now I'm in UBC kinesiology. I'm still dancing, but doing a lot less like hip hop and burlesque and traditional dance, or like that formal dancing, and more traditional. I'm like, why haven't I been dancing this whole time? Culturally dancing. I didn't have regalia, but I was so connected to my community. All of a sudden I'm meeting Indigenous people here. I'm kind of regrouping who I was and who I'd lost through all that grief and trauma and things that I'd suffered in my life. And I was like, wow, this is actually where I belong. I belong back in my culture. I belong rooted. This is probably why I'm so connected to dance for my entire life. So then I start powwow dance training, and I'm at the Friendship Center, and I'm doing my kinesiology degree, and I'm back home, and I'm going to powwows through Treaty 6. I don't know if you guys go to Alberta, but Alberta, there's powwows. You pretty much don't even have to leave Edmonton because there's just so many reserves and powwows all around that you can go every weekend, which is really nice. So I'm getting in touch with my culture. I'm like, this is actually great. I'm still doing a couple performances on the side. People still ask me to do music videos, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna not say no. What do you mean you want me? I don't know. But it was I would be so stressed out because exams are coming, and I would just go and just let her rip, dance all night. My friends were like, wow, you're really good. I was like, no, I'm not, but I really like it, and it doesn't matter. And at some point in my journey, I think it was I was upgrading to high school, chemistry 11 or 12, so this was maybe a decade ago, and I'm doing all this dancing, and I'm doing all this work, and I'm learning a little bit more about what kinesiology is. If this is my end goal, what does this mean for me? What am I going to do? And then I'm gathering all this knowledge, and I have so many questions, so I start asking kinesiologists, I start asking my professors, and then I realized that it's never going to be enough knowledge, that kinesiology is not the end, and that I clearly needed to go into medicine to know everything that I could about the body and how we move and how to integrate wellness and health and dance into a way to help our people. And so all of a sudden it kind of mushroom clouds into this bigger goal. And I remember talking to my old counselor at the time, and he was like, I think I want to be a doctor. He said, yeah, have you finished your grade 10? And I was like, you need to stop being a Debbie Downer. Because I get that you want me to finish high school and that these things are really important, but I also need to know that I can do whatever it is I want.
There's a life beyond high school.
There's a life beyond this high school. There's a life beyond these experiences, and that it doesn't matter that maybe I'm starting this journey at 23, and maybe I didn't graduate high school with everybody else. Maybe I didn't even touch high school until I was 23. That I did all these other things, that it's still possible to do whatever I want. Because sometimes life steers you away. Grief, trauma, pain, our existence as an Indigenous person, sometimes we have a lot more grief and a lot more pain, a lot more issues that we have to work through before we can get to a place where we actually know A, who we are, B, what we want to do, and see how does that work in this kind of colonial world that we now live in.
And we also get a lot of the teachings with those life experiences, and that's also schooling and learning, right? Before we get back on the conventional path.
Exactly. And so I think that I had more then when I realized that I wanted to become a doctor than I did when, say, I was 17, when some people figure out they want to be a doctor. I'm like, you don't even know who you are at 17. How do you know that you want to help people if you don't even know who you are? So here I am trying to start this journey, and I start realizing that, okay, I can't make all the dance classes I want. I can't always find the time to go out to a club and get that energy out. How else do I do this? So I decided to start running. Because I knew it was going to be good for me, but I hated every minute of it.
Same relationship I have to already.
I hated every minute of it. I think when I started running, because as a dancer you have explosive and then relaxed and then explosive and relaxed. It's not the same consistent, steady energy that you need. I ran for a block. then I had to walk for a block, then I ran for a block, then I walked for a block. And I did this for months until I could like finally run a 5K. It took me months to run a 5K. And then the reason why I took that up is because I can do it at any hour of the day. I can go out, if I'm studying till 11 o'clock at night, I can go and run. And it just became my new outlet, my new meditation. And it didn't take over dance, because nothing will ever take over dance, but it was a supplement to get that same energy out, to get that like, I want to call it like, it's like mind numbing, the meditation that happens when you're dancing or when you're running, that you just like, everything shuts off and you just kind of focus on
or clearing, maybe not numbing, but like your thought pattern changes completely, where it's just like clarity, and then you stop dancing, and then you have much purer, clearer, cleaner thoughts in some ways. I don't know. It's like it's somehow like, maybe not numbing, but like, clearing, and you don't even know what's happening. It's like things are happening in the back of your head. You're working through emotions and issues, but you're not actively working. There's like something in your subconscious that's working through these issues that you don't even know. And so this part of healing, it's not an active part of healing. The only active part was me moving my body. That's the only active part. All of the processing of the emotions, all of the processing of those like experiences, like how do I feel here? You don't think about it when you're dancing. It just works itself out.
I heard someone refer to it as entering the zone.
The zone, exactly.
Definitely.
The flow state. There's these different terms for it. And I think like getting in those states too is part of the healing. It's like when you interrupt the worrying, or you interrupt the overthinking that you do in your work life, whether you're going through a traumatic experience or not, like just that constant like nagging overthinking, to make that stop for an hour or 3 or 5, that is also really amazing for for healing. That is huge. Like huge. Finally take a break, and like your mind can just repair itself.
It's like an active sleep. Sometimes you sleep and then you wake up and you're like, oh, I totally am okay because my body processed whatever it needed to do. But that's how I feel about physical movement and dancing and running. And so I'm entering kinesiology and I'm wanting to get into medicine. I make it like my end goal, and they say you have to do all these crazy things to get into medicine. So you have to like volunteer at hospitals, you have to volunteer all over the place. And I was already volunteering, so I was like, well, whatever, I'll just keep volunteering. I start training, doing it's called the Aboriginal Run Walk program through Health, like Sport Med BC and Healthy Heart and Stroke Foundation. And I start kind of run training with them, going into communities, teaching people how to run their first 5K, 10K. All of a sudden it spawns this like, my love of medicine and helping people, and my love of running and fitness and dance. And it's like blending it into this one world. And I was like, I'm exactly where I need to be. This is exactly who I am, and where I didn't even know it, but where I've been working my whole life to be. And so it was pretty profound moments.
So nice,
Yeah, and eventually get into medical school. That's a whole other talk and journey, because and now I'm in my second year, hoping to pass on this knowledge and doing a bunch of work to help Indigenous students that are entering into medicine with self-care, because it's a pretty colonial and fairly racist system. And so part of that is, how do we incorporate, cultural practices, dancing, powwow, smudging in our own practice as physicians to help our self-care as we're trying to help other people. I'm still dancing. This is this last picture. I don't think I'll ever stop dancing. I think the left, that's me dancing in a music video. I think that was like 2 years ago. The middle was about 1.5 years ago. I was dancing at a burlesque show. This one's the last summer at Musquishi's powwow. With my niece. And so I don't think I will ever stop dancing, because it's a place that I find brings me back to who I am. It centers me, it grounds me, and it gives me strength to go forward, because sometimes, whether you're in school or whether you're working, sometimes it takes all of you. And it shouldn't. You need to refill that cup. And for me, dancing is refilling that cup.
Yeah, me too. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. What a beautiful story, and you've got people here who's thank you, you're an inspiration. We've also got a shout out to William White Buffalo earlier.
Oh yeah, William. It's Will and Willow.
Nice, yeah, really inspiring. Thanks so much for sharing your story. Do you have one more slide? I don't want this to end. This is fantastic.
That was the end. He's still dancing.
Well, thank you. I want to open it up to the people listening today. If you have any questions you want to throw at us, use the chat box, not the Q&A, please. And we can share your questions with everyone. I'll give you a few minutes.
Thank you guys for hearing my story.
Yeah.
I realize stories are reciprocal in nature, so it takes a listener to hear.
Mm-hmm. I really love how you told the story too, because looks like the path between this need to dance all the way to medical school is just like this clear pathway, and it just it's incredible when you find something that is healing for you and that is holistic and grounding. It can take that form of taking being the path for you, right? Mm-hmm. And for many people it's different things. It doesn't have to be dance, of course. For you and I, it is dance. Like dance got me where I am today as well. Mm-hmm. I'm here doing my PhD in education. My dissertation topic is on dance, because when I was a teenager and when I needed dance to hold me together, that is what fueled me, and it led to the next thing, and it led to the next thing, and then next I was doing festivals in Tahiti, and then I lived there, and then I started teaching, and then through my teaching, the school that I was at, I decided that no, I needed to study more, and one thing led to another. Here I am now, 35 now, and definitely it's the same. Maybe not in like dance classes like many hours a week or anything, but I'm definitely dancing, and I go back to that to like ground myself, and yeah. It goes in cycles. Sometimes you have that, and sometimes you have down periods, and you dance in different ways, and you dance at home. Like I have a cute little 2-year-old that I can dance with now. It's awesome. We dance at home and every day, and it's beautiful to share that joy, and yeah.
Now you get to pass it on.
Yeah, exactly. So wonderful, so fun. So we haven't got any questions, so I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. This was a really fantastic session. I'm sorry?
You forgot to ask them.
Do we need to turn on? No, they can hear. We asked everyone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone in Lake Babine want to ask any questions also?
Yeah, I just grabbed my mic. I actually was just wondering if you're... Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering if you're available for to travel to other nations as a guest speaker or inspirational speaker. And I run the youth center here in Burns Lake, and we're getting a lot of our kids back in and dance. They do talk about dance, and it's a really small area. It's not a whole lot of instructors that we can find. But I mean, just your story was just incredible, and we do deal with a lot of what you've gone through in your life. So there are some things that we have coming up planned for this year, and I just wondered if you were available as a guest speaker or inspirational speaker.
Yeah, for sure. I also love it up in your territory.
Yeah, it's beautiful up here.
It's very beautiful up there. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you want to contact Davina, or somebody can give my contact to you.
We can talk. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. If you have our email, maybe send us an email as soon as you can, and then we'll be able to call you back or.
Yeah, for sure. I'll do that.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So we do have a couple comments that came through while we were chatting. We've got, wow, Willow, amazing young lady. You're such an inspiration. So hopeful for our youth that they have a mentor like yourself. Thank you for this beautiful talk. I wanted to share with the panel and everyone else that there is a really wonderful field called dance movement therapy. Yes, there is. Thank you. That is worldwide. Says Hannah. It's really a combination of art and psychology and medicine, and more info can be found on the training at adta.org.
Amazing.
That's along with I've heard of art therapy, and there's also dance therapy.
I like that. That's right up my alley.
We're asking if there's a website for our youth to follow. Do you have one? Sorry.
Oh, I do. I do not have a website.
Okay.
I think that's. Oh, it keeps jumping around.
Yeah, it's jumping around. Just give me 1 second. Where are we? Oh, you're here. Also wondering the same thing. If you do inspirational speaking for style of service agency in Chilliwack, powwow dancer, and teach a class in Elder Grove. Yeah, send us an email, please. We're happy to connect you with our speakers. I'm a dance movement therapist, and I have a training program in Vancouver, says Hana Kamea.
Amazing.
Yes. It's great to have you in this world. Your story is helpful for a lot of First Nations people who have struggled. And thanks again, ladies. You rock. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the compliments.
Yeah. It's probably the most compliments ever here. Wonderful.
Interesting.
Thanks so much. I want to. I'm really grateful for everyone who's given comments and asked questions. Thank you so much for joining today. I just want to let you know about our next 3 sessions this month. On January 18th, we have part 2 of Protecting and Restoring the Sacred, the 16 Principles. What was the date that they came? Was it November
18th.
November 18th?
Oh, I
Was
was
it?
26th, I think.
Right, that's right. On November 26th in 2017, we had Corinne Stone and Dr. Phil Lane, who came and joined us. Actually, it was only Corinne Stone that day, but both of them will be joining us on January 18th to talk about spirituality and the 16 principles. Many of you had questions about that aspect of their talk, so yay, we get them back. They get to elaborate on some of that. I'm sure that'll be a really wonderful session. Please sign up for it, register. On January 23rd, we've got Facilitation Skills with Indigenize, a wonderful group that blends artistic and technical approaches to facilitation. That'll also be a really excellent session, January 23rd. And finally, we've got on January 31st, the librarians from the Huihua Library presenting on community research and empowerment. We want to be able to tell you about some of the wonderful initiatives that are connecting communities and professionals to libraries and access to materials and research that are focused on Indigenous peoples. So please join us for that as well. That would be excellent. Again, thank you so much for being here today, and see you soon.